What's our next episode? The Very Peculiar Boy. It was the dead of night. A fog permeated the east end of London. Miss Tabram. Oh! The blade carved itself into the woman's chest. In the same moment, her throat was twice spread open. Is this our Jack the Ripper episode? From left to right, skin was slit. So methodical was this act that the surface of her skin remained an unfrayed perfect line. The guttural scream elicited never reached her lips. Her larynx and vertebrae had been severed. The woman collapsed, her eyes focused on nothing, fully absorbed with unhinged fear. Blood flowed out of her in an endless stream, smothering her esophagus. I've actually never seen that word spelled out before, esophagus. When her throat became full, it drained to a pool beside her. The chance for survival was non-existent, but she would not die immediately. The road to death by design would be an artless torture. This dramatic violin music is just, setting the mood so good. To breathe was in vain. Every breath she inhaled went out the hole in her throat, blood sputtering and thick through her choking, air never reaching her lungs. What she last saw as her consciousness gave way was a dreadful sight. The amused leering of a man she had never met, and a glint of the object of her demise looming from the darkness. Swoopy.
Christ, it stinks! Where's that smell coming from? Look here! Some poor gal's face flat on the curb! Damn drunkard! You think she's conscious? Tain't something I would know. Perhaps best to wake her. Ah! The hell is this?
The two were unsettled by a sight of nightmares. A woman, not a simple drunkard, now drowned in her own blood as her corpse lay on display.
What is this? Someone's coming, mate! This don't look good. We gotta run for it!
And so they made a hasty retreat, shaken to the bones by the implications which would follow from being found next to a freshly slain victim. Into the embrace of night they fled.
I heard footsteps coming from over here. What's this? A woman lying on the street. She's dead! Oh, what a grisly sight. Who could have done this?
The sky was a blanket of gray this morning. Still, my routine went on as normal. I had my morning tea, which had been prepared expertly by Pendleton post-breakfast. Today's was Darjeeling. I added plenty of hot milk in it. This part of the game is so Black Butler. Like, the whole tea, and these are the sweets, and it's like, I want to watch Black Butler again so bad playing this game. It's ridiculous. I sifted through the paper, idly sipping my tea, expecting nothing of note to catch my attention, except something certainly did catch it, and right away at that. Gruesome Whitechapel murderer strikes again in the East End. In a clear pattern, the latest victim was a prostitute, and the cause of death involved multiple stab wounds with a bladed weapon. Can I start taking notes? I can start taking notes. I'm not sure what exactly is going to be needed. Let's overwrite this one. The paper continued to detail the similarities between the murder of this woman, Miss Tabram, and the previously murdered Miss Smith. It's appalling to think about. Someone out there has ended the lives of two people so brutally, and yet they still run free.
It is. London has become more dangerous of late.
It's only natural for everyone to fear being targeted next. Paranoia has them seeing the criminal from every corner, no matter where they are. I could see myself feeling the same were I walking alone.
Well, my lady, I'm certain you know what I am about to say next.
Pendleton seemed concerned. Of course I know. You would like for me to be careful to and from the academy, even when I feel secure inside my carriage.
Not quite.
Then you want to cry, "My lady, I am so very frightened of being alone in this big mansion. I beg you to come home straight away." Is that it?
Wrong.
Then is it, "I confess, I'm the one who killed them. I shall be turning myself in directly."
My lady, you must be joking. As if there were any chance I would willingly turn myself in.
What?
Now then, setting all humor aside.
You are far from humorous. I thought it was good.
I am urging you not get yourself mixed up in any dangerous criminal investigations.
Well, that one is funnier at least. Pray tell, what is a detective without criminals to investigate?
Dangerous ones, if I may reiterate. You'd sooner be the next victim than solve the case.
That isn't true. You always think the worst.
One can never be too careful when both victims pertaining to this case are women.
Promiscuous women? I am not promiscuous. I only go after one guy, okay? Sheesh.
The picture painted is as follows. The police will ring the mansion and report you've been assaulted. I naturally rush to find you, but regrettably I am too late. And as I bemoan your loss in a most shameless public display, it is all I can do to hold your jaggedly sliced abdomen together to keep the caramel custard crammed inside from spurting forth.
Not my caramel custard.
Whatever could I say to your mother and father should such an event come to pass?
Throughout the sky, thunder resounded. The flash of lightning had made his momentarily darkened countenance especially eerie. Enough! Don't speak such ominous things.
Forgive me, my lady. Now, how would you like another serving of your favorite caramel custard?
What nerve! I think you know why I've suddenly lost my appetite.
Regrettable, but in some ways favorable. It means you've heeded my words for today. Do not dare to think you can arrest that heinous criminal on your own.
I would never.
And from this day, I've moved your curfew to 4 o'clock in the evening from 7 o'clock.
No!
Should you choose not to abide by this curfew, I will have to ask that you forfeit your enrollment in the academy.
But isn't that too strict?
Quite the opposite. From where I stand, it's lenient. My lady, there are still many things you do not know. You've yet to experience firsthand the underlying darkness that pervades the streets of London.
Another thunderclap. Though he was only sorting out tableware, I felt an aura of foreboding from the butler. Pendleton, perhaps I've become too sensitive, but you've really no intention of killing me, do you?
What's brought this on? Worry not. No matter your wealth, I would never dream of killing you.
And you are absolutely telling me the truth?
Now it is you who is thinking the worst. At any rate, it's time for school. Mind your new curfew, my lady.
Okay. By the time I arrived, the rain subsided, and the serial killing in Whitechapel was the choice topic of every student. Hi, Flash Gordon.
Have you read the morning paper? Had me shaken by the end of it.
And Faber.
The culprit must be a crafty one if there's not been a single lead on him. Certainly, he must be if even Inspector Lestrade is at a loss. Yes, but the Yard's been at a loss plenty enough times for me not to be surprised. I just hope there's someone out there who can solve it so the monster doesn't get away with it. Don't be so pessimistic. Lestrade's a capable man, for a Scotland Yard officer.
Speaking of which, I hear you and your father are cooperating with them on this investigation. Watson, you might consider making yourself as useful.
But we're students, and his dad isn't so keen on Holmes being part of such a dangerous case as you might think. I didn't know that was any of her business. Doesn't make it any less true. Count your dad among the rest who don't have a clue who the culprit is. If he can't solve the case, what chance do I have?
That isn't something you should say with so much confidence. But I suppose I don't have any leads either. This might be quite a case for everyone to be so stumped. The classroom was rife with discussion. Who could this murderer be? Man or woman? Were they truly so crafty? What was missed? Was there anything to miss? Is Jack the only one not talking about the murders? Like others, I fell into this dialogue with such interest that I didn't notice a schoolmate trying to shuffle past till he bumped straight into me. Oops! Pardon me!
Oh.
Hello! I'd seen this boy several times before, though we had never been introduced, and perhaps that was by intent. A slovenly fringe did little to soften the sharpness of such eyes, and unnaturally deep red, and listless as they were in addressing me, I was still intimidated. His height, too, added to my pause. I'd hoped to be less discouraged upon recalling his name, but what was his name? Aren't you... He didn't care to wait, and without answering, continued to his seat.
Emily, something on your mind?
Well, I only now realize I haven't asked that boy over there for his name.
Over where? Near the window? Miss Whiteley, that would be Jack Miller's.
Jack Miller's.
Oh, so he's the one you meant. He isn't one to socialize. Doesn't talk much, but I've heard he's here through a scholarship, so he must be a smart bloke. Indeed, the two of you couldn't be more different. We have quiet and passing marks on one hand, noisy and failing marks on the other. Oh, but I study! A lot, too. It isn't my fault if I'm not made for the books.
Holmes was less than impressed by the excuse.
He's unique. Nearly all students in attendance are from the West End, you see. But he is from the East End.
Is that significant?
You might not know, so I hope you don't mind me explaining, Emily. Unlike the West End, which is populated by the wealthy, the East End is reserved for the poor. It's the most dangerous area in London.
Oh. No, I wasn't aware. I knew the East End by name, but only that.
Despite unfavorable circumstances, he still passed the entrance exam and earned himself a scholarship. That's a difficult thing to accomplish for even those born in affluent families. A monstrous accomplishment for him, to be sure.
Yes. Now that you've explained, I think so as well. I peeked again at Jack. He paid no attention to any of us in the classroom, instead staring blankly out the window. Since I know his name now, why not see if we can strike up a chat? Yes. Good morning, Jack. I'd like to introduce myself properly, if you don't mind. I'm Emily Whiteley. It's a pleasure to meet you. He was still intimidating. Or could it be that natural nervousness from speaking to someone new? Whichever it could be, I didn't want to let it stop me.
Emily's rather quick, isn't she?
She's only just learned his name. What a curious little puppy she is.
I have to wonder if that's a compliment with the way you say it.
I waited. No response. And then finally, he spoke. Oh, hello, beautiful. You look like you could use some sleep. You having some late nights lately? Hey, buddy.
You need something. Look at that! He said words!
He's not mute. I was certain Watson and Marple thought they were quieter than they were. Right then. Since we've never had a chance to speak to one another, I thought today might be a good day to try. I hear you're very smart. Perhaps you might find it fun to talk and teach me some more efficient study methods.
And why ask me?
It's because you're smart.
A funny sight for you, is it? Surprise, someone from the East End is smart.
Huh?
Or did the serial murders catch your fancy?
His eyes grew ever sharper.
Afraid I don't know anything special you might want to hear. I keep to me own business when I go to and from home.
No, I didn't mean...
Leave off, then.
Jack leant closer to my ear, his voice dropping to a whisper.
How I got here ain't of your concern, so I should prefer if you'd not ask more about it. I find it disagreeable.
Forgive me. Polite but blunt, neutral in tone but sharp enough to pierce me. I felt a frozen hand seize my heart and squeeze it cold. He frightened me. But this was no more in seconds, for he turned back to the window and resumed his gazing. He talked to you, though. Now I've done it. I've caused him such distress. It was never my intention, but intent was often erased the moment unintent became the dominant lasting thought. A lesson learnt as I returned to my seat. I suppose everyone has one or two things they're sensitive about. Understandably so.
It's not you, Emily. He would say the same to any of us. Miss Whiteley, you've a habit of prying into another's life, whether they open the door for you or slam it on your nose. Most are too afraid to even address his name, but you charge straight in with no hesitation. I can't help but respect your, well, unique brand of delicacy. That's enough, Holmes.
I may be a little insensitive, but I'll have you know. Holmes roused me to defend myself, only for me to be cut off before I could start. Good morning, Mr. Mackenzie. I'm glad to see you again.
Good morning, class. Let's all have a seat so we can get started now.
Our teacher ceased all discussion the moment he stepped into the classroom. My schoolmates obliged in a hurry, desks and chairs shuffling about in the process.
You've no doubt heard the news, but there has been some discussion relating to a certain serial murder case. You are in the detective's course. I understand if it piques your interest, but we instructors are responsible for your safety on behalf of your families. The murders are currently concentrated in Whitechapel, but the culprit remains at large. And so I must ask that you take every precaution on the way to and from the academy. Were I the first to discover your corpse mangled nearly beyond recognition, I just don't know what I could begin to say to your loved ones.
I have a feeling that Mr. Mackenzie and Pendleton would get on well.
I extend this warning to our young ladies especially. Stay alert! Should you suspect you're being followed, go to a shop or contact an officer. I'll see it as many times as need be. The moment classes end, you're to go home.
The teachers are fretting so much over us. I wonder what Jack thinks of the case since it's all where he lives. I dared a tiny glance in his direction. Did he fear the murderer? Had he paid any mind to Mr. Mackenzie's warning? If either of those things were so, he made no indication. Jack seemed to have more interest in nothing, that is, staring out the window, than in dangerous somethings, that is, the murders.
All right, class. May I turn your attention to these pots?
Pharmacology was next. In preparation for our lesson, Mr. Underwood presented to us several pots filled with vibrant flowers.
Today's lesson will involve teaching you about this very plant. Would anyone here be familiar with delphiniums?
I am.
Holmes raised his hand and answered, of course.
It is classified as a perennial plant, and typically thrives in mountains with cooler temperatures. It is known for its beautiful blue and purple flowers. It contains a toxic alkaloid known as delphamine.
So much toxicity. That's not the right button. Delphinine. Blue mountain flowers. Got it.
This toxin, if ingested, results in diarrhea and vomiting, or death in severe cases.
I'm actually gonna make a note of that too. There's a lot of poison in this game. I feel like it's gonna pay off in the end somewhere.
Thank you, Holmes. You shared everything I was going to say.
It was my pleasure.
Though these many complications exist, many consider delphiniums to be so beautiful that they risk the danger and grow it purely to admire them. Take a closer look and study it as part of our lesson. And should a friend of yours send you these in the future, I want you to think hard and remember what dreadful thing you've done to them. Really, it was quite the surprise when my wife gave them to me on our anniversary with a smile.
Your marriage sounds, complex, sir.
At any rate, we're to be observing these lovelies. Following that, you're to submit a report on the various ways to make use of their toxin.
And we did precisely that as we divided ourselves into teams. Let me guess, I'm paired up with Jack. Designated students carried their pots to their group stations with a cautious air after hearing what they were capable of doing. A slow, awkward waddle here, a long-held breath and prickle tension there.
Oh! Slipped my mind. Delphiniums are considered harmless unless you eat them.
That's probably good to know.
Now, the toxin can enter your body through cuts on your hands.
God dang it, Mr. Underwood. I'm not gonna need any of this, but I feel like I might.
As a precaution, I want you to wear gloves when carrying pots or touching its petals.
Lupin, you're carrying a pot, but where are your gloves?
My gloves? Ah! How could I have forgotten them? Ah!
Don't go dropping it now!
Quite fortunately, the pot was secured by Watson just before it was to crash onto the floor. Lupin? Watson? The petals didn't touch you, did they?
We're all right. The pot is too.
I'm so sorry. How could I have treated such a pretty flower so poorly? God, I nearly killed it.
Is the flower the only part you feel badly about?
Oh, and of course, the same to you, Watson.
When all chaos from gathering our materials was settled, each of us went to work monitoring the various features of our chosen plant. The flowers themselves are so pretty. I wouldn't have known they carry a deadly toxin. I diligently started scribbling the most distinguished features of the plant before looking upwards and catching sight of Jack yet again. He was observing the same plant as I was. There was a sort of distance in how he observed. I was close, eyes focused, lips bitten, nose folded at the bridge as the petals received a delicate prodding. And he? None of these things. There was no scowl from this morning, but his expression lacked interest as well. All I could read was that he stared and stared blankly. All that watching, and he's not taken a single note. I took a moment to consider if the incident from this morning meant it was best not to approach him. Oh, what could it hurt? Girl, you got a death wish. Pardon me, Jack? My concern was greater, but still I approached.
You again.
He frightened me for a second time. The wall he built with his stare felt impenetrable upon first greeting, to be sure.
Shouldn't keep me waiting if you've got something to say.
But what to say at a time like this? I'm sorry for this morning. I feel like he won't care about that, but I'm not trying to get points with Jack, so... Just stop scowling at me, please. I wanted to give a proper apology for this morning.
What for?
I fear I was too insensitive when we've only just met. Will you forgive me? It was never my intention to speak ill of you, really.
So a noble wants to take pity on the pauper.
Absolutely nothing of the sort.
I'd much rather you not strain yourself with empty words on me own account. I don't need 'em. I thought I told you to leave off.
And there it was. Short, blunt. It lacked so much drama in its clarity that I didn't know how to excuse myself. Okay, I read him properly. That's good. It was not the floor which I noticed then, but again Jack. His hand possessed several ill-dressed cuts. The wounds were fresh. The skin which made to heal around each one was speckled with dried blood, half picked at their edges, and a sore sight no matter how one looked at them. Whenever I get so much as a scratch, Pendleton is right there to clean and bind it. No! He's going to touch the plant with those awful cuts? But the toxin! Don't touch it with your bare hands! I reached out to block him. Rather than express any thanks, he returned my efforts with a snarl.
What is it now?
Upon closer inspection, I spotted that his cuff was stained with blood. Some of those injuries had yet to even close. Weren't you listening to Mr. Underwood? That toxin could enter your body with just a single touch if you've any open wounds.
It's all right. I ain't worried.
Jack motioned to touch the flower. Don't! What if you were to lose your hand?
All right. If it shuts you up.
Finally! He may have put up a bit of a fight, but the win was mine, and it did my heart good. Well, I'm glad your heart's good.
You ought to spend less time nosing about in someone else's affairs, and more time writing better notes for yourself.
Whether he was genuinely so irritated with me or could not be bothered, the result was the same. He went to return to his seat. But those cuts! Those terrible cuts! The potential of toxin wasn't the only issue with them. The thought of leaving them untreated would nag at me till I went mad, I was sure. Jack, wait! Here. Oh my, a CG with Jack? Look at those beautiful black nails. I bound his hand with my white handkerchief.
What's this?
It's only temporary, so promise me that you'll see yourself to the infirmary, all right? I strengthened the knot at the top, but not too tight so as to irritate his injuries. It did look a touch unsightly, but it was better than nothing to prevent all those scratches from getting worse. Jack seemed to think it more than unsightly. He observed it with all the disdain of an object too foreign to comprehend. Those scarlet eyes of his squinted in scrutiny.
You've lived a charmed life. They ain't so wuss off that a little dressing'll make a difference. Or is this just guilt from earlier? Shut up, not.
It isn't like that. I can't ignore something like this. If it's between taking action or doing nothing at all, then I choose action.
So it's a charmed life for a charming girl, is it?
Don't make fun of me. Why did you let your injuries get this bad in the first place? You ought to take more care of yourself.
It's all the same to me, but if you...
Jack?
Never mind.
And thus our conversation was ended. I wonder what he was going to say.
I believe you've had enough time to observe. If everyone would return to their seats, please.
I continued to worry, but what good did worrying do when there was nothing to be done about it? There was no need for further resistance on my part with Jack, so I simply did as instructed. I couldn't resist a final peek in his direction, however, and there he was, gazing out the window once more. I was on my way out of the classroom once the lesson was over when Watson approached.
Emily, you'd best stay away from him.
Who do you mean? Not Jack.
Yes, Jack. It may not be right to say this, but they say Eastenders aren't the most fond of the nobility. You can try to be friendly to him, but there are some who will hate you just for being born into wealth. It's the same for the police and the royal family. If someone hates something blindly, a little kindness won't be enough to change their mind. You take care, alright?
Not you too. We're schoolmates, aren't we?
I know. It really isn't right, but I'd rather you be safe.
And I appreciate that, but he does not strike me as a bad person. Jack never tried to shake away my hand when I wrapped the handkerchief. He was a man of cruel words, and a man potentially kind in action. Potentially. I can agree that he's a bit blunt, at least.
You call that a bit blunt? I know you're a lovely girl, but I hope you know the world isn't all champagne.
Watson could only smile bitterly. Jack had not moved all morning, and he took no interest in his surroundings. I was curious of his expression, if it was stripped of emotion or in deep thought, but that unruly hair made it difficult to see his face. He could have done with a thorough cut and brushing. I'll admit that he isn't the most approachable sort, so I see why people give him a wide berth. But still! Jack being different to us means we can learn something new from him. I want to get to know him. I want to understand him. Emily, this is too soon. We can't fall in love with him yet. For a third time today. For a third time today, I chose to approach him. It cannot be. He's sleeping. He was so passive that I could not tell when he was awake and when he slept. Ah, but he's finished taking proper notes. When did he have the time? He's very queer.